Today, we are kicking off a brand new experience, a brand new journey. I'm super excited to be here with Deb Butterfield. This journey is going to be called Reading Between the Lines. And really, Deb, we've known each other for an incredibly long time because we were, in church together. But you are a published author, and I've always thought, wow, I want to know more about Deb. I want to know about her journey. I want to know about her books. And so this is our opportunity to get to know you better, to connect with your audience, and really to learn just about this journey that you've been on.
Okay. Let's have at it. Dive in.
So tell me a little bit about you. Let's start off with that. Tell me a little bit about you and how you landed in this place of being a published author.
Oh my goodness. I mean, that's a 40-year journey right there. I always wanted to be a writer, but, kids from my generation, writing, acting, you can't earn a living with those jobs. And my parents basically said, go to college or join the military. And I wanted to get out from under my parents' authority. So I joined the military because okay, I'm completely away from that. So I had pretty much a 20-year journey of the typical being married, raising kids, getting divorced, which isn't necessarily typical, but the desire to write never went away. So when I got to a point in my life, I think when I was in my 40s, and I said, if I'm ever going to make this dream happen, I've got to do something and do it now. And that's when I very actively started working toward becoming a published author and wrote my first book. So
why do you think it is our 40s, literally, where things come together? I mean, what is that? We finally get mature enough where we're like, well, nobody else is going to do it. We need to do it.
I think a lot of it is number one, you're pretty much past the childbearing age when you hit your 40s. And you've come to realize that this is my life. I want to, this is my life. I'm not living it for somebody else. And, I could use the wrong language, but forget. You come to the point where you don't care anymore about what other people think. You care about what your life is. And so you just make those decisions that I'm going to do this.
Well, I, for one, being just a little few years behind you, just a little bit, am incredibly inspired by you and have been for a long time because it does seem pretty overwhelming to think about writing down even one story, even just my story. That is difficult to think about. So we're going to harken back to about 10 years ago when you first started writing. Well, it was probably more than 10, but you published your first book about 10 years ago, Carried by Grace. And I want to ask you about that book. This month, actually, you and I both know is this next month, April, whenever we end up publishing this podcast, will be on the heels of April being Abuse Awareness Month. And it's very apparent to me that there's some statistics out there that will alarm you in this day and age. Maybe we thought abuse was a big deal in the 80s and 90s, but listen to this statistic. 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 20 boys is the victim of child abuse. That's from the victimsofcrime.org statistics, their webpage. And harken back to Carried by Grace, that's what this book is about. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
My daughter was a victim. I was in my second marriage, and he decided that he wanted to abuse my daughter, and that's what he did. So she was brave enough to speak out. She was about not quite 13 when she came to me with, this is what's going on. And, so then I made the mistake of going to my husband by myself instead of with someone else or with my daughter. And as a mother and as a wife, you don't want to believe your husband's doing these things, right? So what he told me was very plausible. And that's what I took back to Sarah. My daughter was not, she seemed to accept it at that point in time. She didn't really say anything, but not too many weeks after that. And she basically threatened suicide and everything exploded. So that was a several year journey to get through that difficulty. And that's where Carried by Grace comes from.
The book is amazing in itself that you were able to write down the story. And I know Sarah's been completely supportive of that, which has been great. I mean, that's so good for other people.
Yeah.
Obviously, anybody who has suffered abuse, is a parent who is going through this trial and tribulation, what a great resource for them. What a great resource for them. Because I cannot imagine as a mother the anger, the rage, the helplessness, the fear. I can't imagine approaching the situation, how you even decided which direction to go, how overwhelming it can be. So talk to me a little bit about those feelings and maybe the feelings that you have struggled with as far as guilt even.
Yeah, there was a lot of guilt, definitely. And mostly it was this little voice in my head always saying, you're the one who married this man. So there was a lot of guilt that I had to get through. I had to recognize my responsibility, and I had to learn to recognize what was false guilt. Because even though I married him, it was still his choice to do what he did. So I don't know that I ever felt helpless. I know there was a lot of anger, and at one point I was doing things intentionally so that he would to hurt him as much as I was hurting. But from the start, there was always a decision. We are going to get through this, and we're going to get through it, period. So
Talk to me a little bit about your faith during this time.
that's the only thing that I think really that got me through. I can't imagine going through anything like this without having a faith in God, because that was my anchor. From that first day on, I knew that God was with me and that he was going to be with me to help me get through every day. And that's what I had to do. I had to take it one day at a time. And I started the day with reading Psalms. I would read 5 Psalms a day, and that helped kind of ground me. And so often, Jodie, it shouldn't surprise me. It shouldn't surprise anyone, because this is how God works. But so often the emotions that were being expressed in the Psalms that I was reading that day was exactly where I was at. So it was like David was echoing how I felt. And I learned from that, because I thought, you know what? Here's David, a shepherd to start with, but a king eventually, who was just, he was just laying it all out. When he went to God, he didn't hold anything back. He expressed his anger. He expressed every emotion that he was experiencing. And I thought, you know what? If David can do that, why can't I? So there were times when I went to God in prayer and I just raged. I allowed my anger to come out toward him, and I knew that he would understand where I was at. It allowed me to get that anger out so that I wasn't passing it on to one of my kids or a friend or someone else. I was able to get that anger out and then move on to a more positive emotion.
So I have to go back probably 20 years into your into your life to ask you this question. where does that faith come from? Because I can relate to being incredibly angry and making a decision not to lean on God, but to walk away and to struggle. And what what is it within you? Where did that faith come from? Where did that start? That such a foundation was built that you knew in the hardest time of your life, you were going to be able to rely on God.
Wow.
Where did
That's a
that
great,
begin? Was that your
I was,
parents?
no, I was raised in a Methodist church,
Uh-huh.
and we didn't go to church every Sunday. And in actuality, I had kind of a bad experience from the minister of that church when I got ready to graduate from high school. So I know it wasn't that. I I honestly can't answer that, Jody. I have no idea, other than the fact that I spent time reading the Bible as a kid, and I think what I've just held on because I do not want to end up in the fires of hell.
Hmm.
And so I'm constantly hanging on. And I guess because I've gone through enough experiences, difficulties, and seen God bring me through those.
Hmm.
Maybe I didn't realize it was God at the time, but as I've looked back at different points in my life, I've seen that God was there, and that strengthens your faith. So, I mean, I don't know. It's God's faith that He's put in me.
Hmm. That's incredible. It's funny. I always tease that I think I have loss of short term memory, or maybe it's long term memory, because I have about two Rubbermaids full of my prayer journals in my storage room. And
Wow.
I often have thought if I could just sit down and take a day and read through, well, it'd take me more than a day, but read through those prayer journals, I bet I would remember that God was there every time. That when I did go through that hard time and that hard time and that hard time, there was evidence of Him. And what's funny is that when I used to journal as a teenager, those were things I would have thought about, right? I thought, okay, if I'm writing this down, this is evidence that He's carried me through. And yet, you come to this point in your life where you're like, how did I so quickly forget? He's been there all along. So it's really kudos to you for not having loss of short term memory. Kudos to you for taking, the vitamins and making sure that your brain is nice and strong. Because it takes that reminders. So, one thing that you've talked about is that you don't get through something like this being just, I guess we say soft on yourself. Can you explain that a little bit to me? Those times of giving yourself grace and that being so much part of it. However, the tools that you use to get through something like this.
Well, I think a lot of that goes back to definitely my childhood. Both, I'm a baby boomer, and so both my parents grew up through the Depression, and they both served in the military during the Second World War. So I was raised with a tremendous amount of discipline, and I've carried that all through life. Additionally, I joined the Marine Corps, and that's probably like the most disciplined military service there is. So that what I learned there has really helped carry me through. And when I talk about you can't be soft on yourself, what I mean is that you have to face every day and know this is what I've got to do today. When all of this crap happened, my husband was carted off to jail, and my daughter was pulled out of the home and put into foster care for a while. But I had a 2-year-old at home, two teenagers and a 2-year-old. Don't ever mix teens and toddlers as a parent. Doesn't work. But I had this 2-year-old at home. So it was like, I need to be here for him. I need to be here for my daughter to help get her through this. So it's a matter of not allowing yourself to sit on the couch with a can of soda and a bowl full of potato chips and binge watch something on television all day. You have got to discipline yourself to meet your responsibilities. But the where the grace comes in is that yes, there's going to be times when you fall. When it's like you just have done everything that you know to do and you're tired and you just want to sit down and have a good cry, then sit down and have a good cry and then say, okay, now it's time to get back up and get started again. So that's what I mean by not being soft on yourself, because it's so, well, in today's society, I don't think today's society understands what discipline means, in that sense that you just get up and do what you have to do every day. So,
Well, I love just you even saying that because I'm a Gen Xer and I'm raising millennials and Gen
mhm.
Yers, Gen Zers, whatever you want to call them. And it is so apparent, you look at my dad, who's a boomer, and how disciplined he is. And I would completely agree with you. There's something that's been lost in this message, and it's not for lack of trying, I don't think, for some of us. I think there's been so many outside influences that have affected our parenting that I mean, it's
Mhm.
not easy. It wasn't easy for y'all to raise us, but it's sure not easy for us to raise them
Yeah,
and instill that discipline. That
yeah,
discipline. Because it's not about, like you said, it's about your faith as well, but you have to be disciplined enough to make a change, to take a different road. There's two
mhm,
choices: the
yep,
couch and go help rake the leaves. Let's do this one.
yeah,
Well, I love getting to talk to you just a little bit about parenting and that because, within your faith journey, it's very much about that. How you raised up these kiddos. I love it. So it's super, super interesting to get to talk to you about that. And so, when you talk about, those practical tools for navigating a crisis, having that discipline that you learned is so vital. But what kind of tools did you give your daughter to, make it through? Did you immediately put her into therapy or how did that all work?
oh yeah. After the night she put the knife to her chest and said, something has to change, we took her to the emergency room, and of course, all kinds of questions. She was placed in a psychiatric hospital, and she was there for 3 months for treatment. So, as far as what provided for my daughter, I guess it was that.
Yeah.
Uh, because I had very little, I didn't have daily contact with her at that point. There were visitations, but the strange part about a lot of it is that she blamed me for all of this more than she had more anger toward me than she did, I think, her stepdad. And I
Mhm.
could never understand that. So our relationship was very strained for several years um, because of that. So I can honestly say that there's probably nothing that I provided tool wise for her to get through that other than just the example of my own life as she observed me living my own life. Um, but my faith, my reading the Bible every day and spending time with God in prayer was the really only practical tool that I had. Aside from, of course, I went into counseling as well.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Well, you absolutely are hero mom for putting her into a treatment facility where she could get the help she needed. I mean, step
Yeah.
one, you saved her life, in so many ways. And just believing her, right? Getting
Yeah.
getting to the point where you were like, okay, this happened. The reality kind of smacked you in the face and you had to then proceed. So, how is your relationship with her today? Tell us a little bit about her and her survival story.
It's great. We have a wonderful relationship, and it all started, I don't know, she maybe when she was about 18, because she was 13 when this started. So at some point between 13 and 18, I wrote an apology letter to her. She wasn't living with me at that point. She was in foster care. And I wrote an apology letter to her, and that opened the doors to restoring that relationship. And we have a wonderful relationship now. She has a master's degree and is a licensed therapist. So, yeah, she's helping people in the way that she was helped when she was a teen.
That's amazing. So, looking back on your journey, you never thought that you would be an author. You obviously could never see her becoming a therapist someday. What a journey. And this book, Carried by Grace, was your first, and
Mhm.
it's coming up on this 10-year anniversary. Um, what would you like to say to people who have been helped by this book, the readers? I know you don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of people have probably been helped by this story.
What do I want to say to those
Yeah, what would you
readers?
say to those readers?
I'm sorry they had to go through what they did, but I'm so glad that they were able to find my book to help them get through it. And basically, that's why I wrote the book, because at the time I went through it, there was nothing out there. I mean, Amazon was, you know, barely a blip on the screen at the time, as we're talking, what, 1994. And so, it wasn't just, oh, let me go to Amazon and see what kind of books are out there. But there just wasn't much out there. And in all of the years that since I've published that, and even given talks at different organizations, I have never had another mom ever come up to me and say, I was in your same position. I've had women say, I was the victim, but I've never had another mom come up to me and say, thank you, because your book helped me.
Hmm.
I don't know why that is. I don't know why mothers are afraid to say, hey, this is what's happened to my child. But I'm glad that my book has been there as a resource to help get them through, because when you have somebody that comes alongside you that's been through that same thing, they understand better than anybody else can understand. They know the emotions that you're dealing with. They know the up, the down, is it ever going to end? Where's the light at the end of this tunnel? And it just is so much more meaningful when you have somebody that you can join with to get through it. And because there's not that many women that will come alongside physically, it's the next best thing is that book.
Oh,
So, and
100%.
I have had readers that have reached out to me via email to say thank you. So yeah, I'm sorry that they've had to go through it, but I'm delighted that my book has helped them navigate that journey.
Don't you think, too, a lot of it has to revolve around shame? I
Oh
mean,
yes.
what a tremendous, I mean, is there more shame possible than that story? I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know.
and then how do you, and I wonder how they, overcome that shame to get to the other side. Obviously, your book has helped many of them, even if they're not coming forward to say, oh, hey, same story, same story.
Yeah.
They're there for sure. And maybe that's the story, and the idea is that no one else is writing about it. Nobody else is conquering shame to come forward, especially that early in the game that you did, and say, I am a mother. My child was abused by my husband, and here's how we overcame, and you can too.
Yeah. Yeah. It was 12 years after it all happened before I wrote the book. But shame is a big one. And I had one friend that knew what was going on, but I went 3 months before I ever told anybody in my family. And I think basically once I said something to someone else, that begins to break that chain of shame. And it definitely is a tool of the devil, shame, because it keeps us silent. It keeps us from overcoming. But I think for me, what helped work through a lot of that shame was just the point that I had to realize that yes, I married this man, but he made the choice,
Mhm.
and I did not know what was going on. Now, I would I would have guilt and responsibility on my end if I had known he was doing this, but I didn't know. And that's a part of what certainly helped me get past the shame as well, was the fact that this was strictly his choice. And if I had known, I certainly would have done things a lot differently.
And obviously your life changed dramatically once this incident happened because this person was no longer someone that you could trust and the marriage that you had built wasn't what you thought it was.
Yeah, definitely. So, there's a lot. I mean, in the book, I talk about the mother being an indirect victim. We weren't the victim of the abuse, but we still suffer in the sense that our child has been wounded, our marriage has been wounded, our life is entirely different. So there's, you you have to face the loss of the dream that you had for your family and for your marriage. And so yeah, there's a lot of loss that goes along with this. And in my case, and I'm sure that there in other cases, I don't know of them, but I'm sure they're out there where the the abuser changed his life, made things right, and that the relationship was healed. But in my case, that didn't happen. So we have no contact with him at all anymore, and no desire, because we know that there's been no change
Mhm.
on his side. So yeah, there really, life is a lot different than it might have been. And one of the first questions that a lot of people ask when any crisis hits, like, doesn't matter what it is, it's, why, God? Why did this happen? And I wasn't any different. So, but God finally answered that question for me. And it was profound and made such a difference in how I navigated the rest of the journey. And that was the simple fact that if if Sarah hadn't been bold enough to say something and bring this all out, she would have gone through another 5 years of that abuse.
Mhm.
So it was God's way of bringing all of that out into the open and protecting her from further abuse. And that was the point where it was like, okay, every man has free will. My husband was a Christian. He was a deacon in the church, Jodie, yet chose to do these things. And so once I had that answer from God, and once I realized, wow, you're right, Sarah would have had to deal with this for another 5 years. So at that point, it was like, I was glad that it had all come out into the open so it could be healed, stopped and healed from that point on.
Of course. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and that's the thing too, is just being wounded in that way. You guys weren't the only victims. Him being a deacon in the church, I mean, that directly um, impacts the congregation. You know, if anyone was to know, or if there was any faith, I think a lot of times we put our faith in men in the church, men and women, but we put our faith in people. And then when they disappoint us, we turn to God and are angry because of it. And so that opens up a whole new Pandora's box about kind of the quote unquote victims that were even around that scenario and that situation in church leadership.
Mhm.
And it happens over and over and over again in congregations across the country.
Yeah.
And when we are disappointed, we lose our faith. People walk away, they're disappointed. They think every church is the same. They think all leadership is the same. And I'm reminded all the time that we're human and that God is the one that will not fail us. He is the one who will never fail us and never disappoint us. But men will, time and time again, they will disappoint us. Well, this conversation, of course, is profound and needed. I hope lots of our listeners get a chance to tune in and really hear your heart on it and hopefully pick up the book. Again, Carried by Grace. It's been out for over 10 years and you can get that on Amazon. Is that right?
Yes, they can also find it at my own website. So,
Go ahead and tell us your website and tell
um,
us where we can read your blog. I get a chance to check out your blog and enjoy it quite a bit.
actually, I have two websites. One is debralbutterfield.com, and that's a website for people who are just my reader fans. And then I have a website called themotivationaleditor.com, and that's a website for writers where I help other people learn how to write their own books. So the Motivational Editor really is the best place to go to for purchasing any of my books, any of my products. But you'll find the link to it on the other website as well. So yeah, I mean,
Tell us this amazing accomplishment. How many books have you written so far?
actually, there are 11 books with my name on them. Two of them are anthologies that I compiled and edited and have stories in as well. So,
And this most recent book, I cannot wait to talk to you about some of these themes throughout all of them, because it's not like I'm picking up a storybook about, what's happening frolicking in the forest. Like there's really significant themes in these books. Give us a little sampling of that real quick.
in my first fiction series, definitely forgiveness is a big one, and learning to believe in yourself. Each book had its own theme, but major themes that run through it are forgiveness and learning to believe that God truly loves you. And, He's there. He's going to provide, which a lot of us, we struggle with. I mean, I've struggled with that all my life. Even though I have my faith, I'm always asking, well, I know this is what the word says, but will God do that for me? So that's one of those little voices that I've had to overcome through my life.
Well, this is going to be a fabulous series. We can't wait for people to join us as we discuss. And that wraps up our first episode, I believe. Deb, congratulations.
Thank you. It's great. Hopefully the other episodes won't be on a topic that's quite so heavy. I mean, this one definitely, it's a tough subject, and it's I don't find it uncomfortable to discuss anymore because I've done it enough. But I know that it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. But unfortunately, with the statistics that you pointed out, it's happening every day. And there are people out there who need to hear this.
And we as moms need to hear it. We as moms need the encouragement, and it's really a powerful message. So thank you for sharing your heart this morning. I appreciate you. And, the thing too is we need to get to know you and get to know your story so that we can hear how in the world you developed all these pretend stories. I know they're not pretend, but these other stories and these other books and the richness of them, the themes. And so I think it gives us a great perspective of kind of where you're coming from. And I know more of your life and more of your testimony will come out as we discuss, and just
Yeah.
can't wait to learn alongside you and get to grow in my faith as well. So Deb, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to Reading Between the Lines. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Let's continue the conversation on Facebook. I'd love to hear how you're applying today's insights.